Hello, gorgeous soul. Welcome to Susie's Enchanted Crossroads. I'm Susie, and this podcast helps you navigate your journey through the crossroads by taking a deeper look into witchcraft and spirituality. So settle in, grab your beverage of choice, and let's get this episode going. Hello, gorgeous souls. I'm back. So I didn't drop the episode for last week, and I'm getting over what I thought was pneumonia. Thank goodness it wasn't. Knock on wood. We keep being healthy. But walking pneumonia is rampant where I am right now. So last week was a crazy week. It was the first week back from Thanksgiving break. And not only was my schedule booked up, but then I started having these symptoms. So this week I'm going to be dropping both episodes for you. I'm staying hydrated. I hope you are too. So maybe we can take this time to maybe take a sip of water or whatever beverage you happen to be drinking right now. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I am super, super excited with the winter solstice coming up. I'm already ready for winter break, believe it or not. The energy out here is very different. I know I've been talking to a lot of clients about the change, and I want to hear from you. What are you feeling around this time? I know for most of us, if you're in the States, the week after Thanksgiving just felt like the longest week. For me, however, thank goodness it went by super quick. I was just so bombarded with work, but I already knew it was going to happen. I already knew that I was going to have at least 3 to 4 late days from work. I knew I was going to get evaluated with my um, um, official walkthrough. And for myself, I was like, you know what? Just get it done, get it over and done with. That way, the last 2 weeks before break, I can pretty much coast it, give or take a few late days here and there. But yeah, let's go over some things. Remember that I have the communal Reiki the first Wednesday of each month and the third Wednesday of each month. Y'all have got to take advantage of this. I love when y'all sign up. The first Wednesday is just a restorative Reiki. I had some people coming in, especially after the holidays, if you're in the States, of course, and just really regrounding ourselves, cleansing of that energy, whoever that you had to be around, if that holiday week or day just happened to be pretty heavy. Um, all the crazy consumerism with Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all of that. Plus, now that we have gotten into December, winter solstice is knocking right around the corner. Christmas, if you celebrate, is also around the corner. And as we get into all of that holiday spirit, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it can be very draining. And especially if you are not protecting your energy, especially from energy vampires. So, this third Wednesday and every third Wednesday that I have Reiki, this is to elevate your practice. And this is especially for, it's open to everyone and anyone, but especially if you are a reader, if you channel, if you're a mentor or a coach, and also if you work with people. So I'm talking about those in the medical field, fellow educators. You're just, you're in the service industry. You're in constant contact with people 24/7. Well, I shouldn't say 24/7, but you are always around that energy. Every third Wednesday, I not only send Reiki to you, I also pull a tarot card and do some candle work magic. So I would really love to see y'all there. I know we can all benefit from it. It is at a little bit of a cheaper price. And this is so it doesn't, hopefully break the bank and or break the wallet, especially around the holidays, and just to for me to give a little to my community, but also because as a collective, when we're all grounded, that beautiful grounded energy really starts expanding outward. And I feel we can all use some good grounded energy, take some cleansing, clearing breaths, just in general for our beautiful planet. So, if you're interested, it'll be December 18th at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. It is via Zoom. I've got all the links in the show notes and on my socials. Would love to see you there. Or, I mean, camera can be off, but virtually see you there. All right, so let's get crack-a-lackin'. If you haven't noticed, and I'm sure you probably noticed, this Friday is Friday the 13th. That's right, right in the middle of Christmas time, all this holiday cheer, we've got a very quote unquote spooky day. So it's almost, I've been seeing some memes and some GIFs and some videos on like the spooky girlies, all excited to bring that Halloween quote unquote energy into the Christmas season. But I'm gonna break some things down about Friday the 13th. Yeah, I really, really am. And it's not what we have been told it is. And I'm sure for most of you, you might already know that Friday the 13th really shouldn't be a day to be feared as far as superstitions go, because it actually happens to be a very, very spiritual significance. But as we get into all of this patriarchal bullshit, that's when we began really seeing the shift of Friday the 13th being celebrated as the sacred feminine into becoming a superstitious day to open or to invite unlucky events. So, let's get started. I always like to bust the myth about Friday the 13th, especially when it comes to different superstitions like don't open an umbrella in the house or walk under a ladder that's on the sidewalk. It's bad luck if a black cat crosses your path, and black cats and these terrible superstitions is going to be a whole other episode. But it it just is not what it is. No one can prove that there's more misfortune or unlucky things that happen that takes place on Friday the 13th. But because it has been put out there, we tend to notice if something bad happens to us on that day specifically. And though, as much as I did a lot of, my research on this, it's really hard to pinpoint when it really started to come about that Friday the 13th was just such an unlucky day. And it also doesn't help that we've got, Friday the 13th, the movie, right? And especially that. And it really feeds into that superstitious fear that people have. But as most things, if we were to look back on Christian religion, there were several examples where the 13th guest at the Last Supper was the person that betrayed Jesus, which was Judas. So of course, with that in itself made sense if people who read the Bible, understood this, and really are part of that religion would be nervous about Friday the 13th or would to say it's kind of a damned day or a cursed day. Also, people look at the number 13 in numerology as it's considered to be an unlucky or cursed number. And we look at that as the 12 disciples, right? And the 13th being Judas. And so, oh my gosh, the number 13 is cursed. But people see the number 13 as uneasy, not because they're truly breaking down the numerology, which I will, but because when we think about what in our modern society, we see 12 months in a year, 12 inches in a foot. And anything beyond the 12, the 12 on the clock. 13 is like almost that forbidden number. But it really doesn't, it isn't what we think it is at all. We were just really served that, and when one thing happens, and someone says it, and we continue that, right, as a society. And where there's a fear of it, then yeah, what happens? We start to feed into that fear. People that especially want to come into power and can really hold that over us. But what if I were to tell you that even though Friday the 13th is often associated with superstitions and fears, it holds the most beautiful and unique history rooted in the celebration of the sacred feminine. Yeah. hmm It's not something to be feared at all. But Friday the 13th is actually the most powerful and the most connected we have to divine feminine energy. The number 13 in itself, a feminine symbol. Friday, the day of the goddess, right? With Venus. And the 13 moon calendar, which also honors the sacred feminine of our menstruation. And so I'm going to be going over these things that I just mentioned as a reclaiming of the sacred feminine to celebrate divine femininity or the divine feminine on Friday the 13th. And I'm going to give you some little rituals you can do to honor the divine feminine this Friday the 13th. So let's get started. Let's just start from the top. The number 13 as a feminine symbol. Although people are like, oh, unlucky 13, its rich history is closely tied to the lunar calendar. And the lunar calendar consists of the 13 moon cycles each and every year, with each moon cycle representing if you're, a woman that bleeds, or even if you don't, that's our natural menstrual cycle. And that is the natural cycle of the divine feminine. The association with the moon and the menstrual cycle really celebrates that connection, that deep connection between women, the moon, and if you read into tarot, the mysteries of the moon when it's at night, you see the shadows, you know what's true, and where your imagination begins and ends, but also of life and creation, because we're looking in our womb space and how we create life. And not only create life, but begin that creative drive and the creativity that seeps and is birthed from us. That is something where I was like, hell yeah, tell me more about that number 13, which I will get into more of the numerology of it. Because if we're looking at the numerology, right, the one and the three, the one is that start, almost that seed. And when we look at the number three, that is our creative self, our nurture self. That's when we come together with other people as far as that three. The one, new beginnings. And the three, joy, self-expression, creativity. And you combine that to create such a powerful energy that encourages us to embrace change, to let go what no longer serves us, and to embark on a journey of our own self-discovery. And then if you break it down even more, you add the three and the one where you get four, there's that beautiful balance, celebration, a coming together, being grounded. The number 13 holds a profound significance in this numerology. Of course, we think about it as being unlucky now because that's often what we're heard in society. We hear it, but it is the symbol of transformation, rebirth, and evolution. And sometimes when we have to go through a rebirth, depending on your stance, it can seem like such a shit moment. We think to ourselves, why is this happening to us? I'm so unlucky. But because stepping out of our box and our comfort zone isn't for the faint of heart. But it has to happen. We have to have those growing pains. And if you look in tarot and we look at the major arcana card, the number 13th is the 13th. The number 13 is the death card. It is a major arcana card. And normally when I pull this card for my clients, I do tell them, no, don't freak out. But the death card has come up. And a lot of times when that death card comes up, it is a cry for you to really start seeing what needs to be changed. What needs to be cleared out so that way you have a clear path. Even though we are coming into the Friday the 13th happening in December is so beautiful and poetic because we're coming into the winter solstice. And if you were to look anywhere outside right now, if you're in the northern hemisphere, in the winter solstice, what do you see in nature? Things are starting to go to sleep, if not already. And we see leaves falling from the trees and we think it's so beautiful and the fall and then the trees are losing their leaves and now they're bare and we think they're dead but no, they're just asleep. It's time for hibernation. Now some things do die and it's time to clear out that space. It had its cycle. And that is such the vital part, right? In essence, the number 13 reminds us that transformation is a vital part of life. It's just like the changing of the seasons, just like the cycles of the moon. So, number 13 isn't doom and gloom, it's not scary. It's really a number for potential, for personal growth, and yes, to embrace the unknown. But this is where we need to find our footing to be grounded and to set up protective boundaries and go for it. Feel the growth. I love it. Okay, so now that we broke down the number, let's look at the day, Friday. And if you're new, hi, welcome. Or if you haven't heard yet, I did a few episodes back on the days of the week and things you can do. And Friday is the day of the goddess. Friday derives its name, if you're looking at it, from the Norse god Frigg or Freya. And Freya was revered as a goddess of love, fertility, sensuality, beauty. She really embodies that sacred feminine in all of her various forms. And Friday was dedicated to her worship. And many cultures associated with Venus, it's Venus Day. And it's regarded as a day to honor the goddess and the feminine aspects of divinity. Venus also governs things like love, material possession, pleasures. That's why Friday has its association with love. And it was so funny when I was doing research again on this day, um, where it was like Venus also brings in like what you desire, even if it's like abundance and money. And normally, when do we get paid? On the Fridays, either the first Friday of the month, first and third Friday, but it's Friday normally. So I thought that was an interesting little tidbit there. I was like, you know what? Hey, hell yeah. But Friday is Venus Day. And if we know it, it's the epitome of feminine energy, right? It's the end of the week. We are happy. The work week is done. And it reminds us that, hey, rest is on the horizon for most of us if you don't have to work on the weekend. It's a time to relax. And hell, maybe it's a time to play, go out, have a good time. As a society, we look forward to to Fridays. You know what I mean? Like, oh, TGIF. Thank goddess it's Friday. That's what we naturally finding ourselves in this energy. And Venus energy also encourages us to tune into our own female energy, stimulate our creativity. So just like the number 13 has that potent feminine energy into it, so does the Friday. See? All right. I love talking about the moon, so let's do the moon. The matriarchal lunar calendar is very, very fascinating. So, I'm going to read off this little paragraph that I had gotten from Revolutionary Mystic. And it states, the 13 moon calendar is also known as the matriarchal lunar calendar. It brings another fascinating facet to the celebrations of Friday the 13th. The ancient calendar, followed by various indigenous cultures worldwide, emphasizes the sacred connection between lunar phases and the mysteries of the feminine. It recognizes the lunar cycle's 13 segments, each corresponding to a menstrual cycle, highlighting the deep rooted link between women, vulva bearing people, and the moon, and its 28-day cycle. This perspective adds depth to the understanding of Friday the 13th as a day to honor sacred feminine and the harmonious dance between women, menstruation, and the womb, the moon, and the cycles of life. Conveniently, under colonization, the 13th month was removed from the calendar, contributing to the erasure of the matriarchal belief system and genocide of indigenous tribes across Turtle Island, so-called Americas. So we had this amazing 13-month calendar. And it really did just sync beautifully with femininity and the divine that comes with it. And again, this 13 moon cycle that we had every year was so linked, besides the cycles of the moon, The average female also experiences about 13 periods per year. So if a woman's periods are synced with the cycle of the moon, normally, if she is synced, she will shed her lining on the new moon and ovulate on the full moon. On average, the 13th falls in the middle of the moon cycle and represents that halfway point between death and rebirth. So you have that halfway point between the new moon, which is where a woman is shedding the death, and the full moon, where she is ovulating the rebirth. You see that? You see that? Went long ago, and I did read this. Oh, what was the name of the book? I think When God Was a Woman. I'm not sure who the author is. I will link it in the show notes. But long ago, when a woman was in her bleed, in her sacred bleed, she was considered to embody divine and magical powers because she was regarded for all of her wisdom and the ability to offer intuitive and psychic messages. She was left alone and doted on, and really taking into account whoever she allowed in to share these intuitive downloads she would receive as she was bleeding. And when she was ovulating, she was considered to be at the height of her power because she was able to receive and hold and possibly create new life. So when we saw this shift in society with the patriarchy, women are now made to feel shame when we have our periods. To pretend like we're not even having periods, like we're not even cramping, like we're not receiving these intuitive downloads, as if we are supposed to just ignore what's happening within us, which is terrible because this is a time where we are at our most sacred. But I had to take a break. I had to take a little breath there. I do feel a certain way when it does come to a woman's menstrual cycle and the way society is. Like it would always blow my mind how I would see these commercials of these girls and women on their periods and they're just skipping around and playing tennis and swimming and just having a grand old time. Like, the fuck? What's happening? Let's take a sip of water together. Mm-mm. I just, that's not real life. I'm sorry. Maybe for some of you, which is awesome, but me, I'm dying of cramps. I, no, didn't want it to be me. But a lot of times, obviously, the world doesn't stop for a woman who's on her period, but damn, I don't know about just being in pain the whole time. But anyway, that can be another a topic for another day. All right, let me look at my notes here. Where are we? I already talked about the lunar cycles. All right. Reclaiming the sacred feminine, which is so beautiful now because now that I am, or you are listening to this episode, now we can start stepping away from the fear of Friday the 13th and start reclaiming that sacred feminine energy and put it as a positive symbolism for Friday the 13th, to be honest. And to really recognize that even though it was supposed to undermine our most powerful day as women, and our strength, We are now starting to shift that focus as Friday the 13th becoming an empowering, sacred, feminine day where we embrace it and our connection to the lunar cycle and honoring goddesses. I love it. I love this shift because for a long time I was it just why is Friday the 13th such a scary day? But I feel like the most powerful because we are starting to reconnect, especially as we start to reconnect with each other. So now I want you to celebrate the divine feminine of Friday the 13th. No more fear. Now we really want to have that all that feminine energy that we have within us. Push all of that. Oh, Friday the 13th is such an unlucky day. Nah. Friday the 13th is a day of goddesses. It is a beautiful day for creating and celebrating life. It is a beautiful day to really sit with your emotions, with who you are. Look in the mirror and just tell yourself how gorgeous you are, not only on the outside, but on the inside too. And remember, we all have masculine and feminine energy within us. We have to. That's our sacred balance. So really coming into that feminine energy. Just want you to think about that. To celebrate femininity in every form. Okay. So, what are some things that you can do to honor the divine feminine on Friday the 13th? Remember, you don't got to do a whole bunch, okay? You don't got to break the bank. Even just sitting on that day, not being scared of it, no fear, just being in it is enough. But yeah, you can have rituals, gathering ceremonies on this day, but it's really about really harnessing different and various forms of self-expression, your self-expression, the feminine self-expression, and that acknowledge of the nurturing and the creative. The easiest thing would be maybe moon gazing. I have a telescope, and this Friday the 13th is the waxing gibbous. So I can't wait to see it because we are coming up on the full moon, which I believe is Sunday or Monday. And hopefully it won't be cloudy here and I could just look at her beauty. And you don't really need a telescope, just look up at the moon. And as you reflect and you're looking up at the moon, you can reflect on all the phases of the moon as they coincide with all of your phases and reflection of life within you. You can create an altar to the divine feminine or even an altar for yourself. You know how I love to say, you are the altar. You can have an altar for yourself. And you can put offerings like, I don't know, you can do flowers, moon water, chocolates, anything that really reflects or has symbolism representing femininity or even like to the deities. Like we said, to Venus or Freya, Frigg, Gaia, Isis, and maybe you can light a candle and just really saying a few words of gratitude. Perfect time for journaling, let me tell you. And when we're journaling, really journaling out our intuitive downloads and we may be receiving or being open to receiving on that day. Um, Maybe sharing thoughts and feelings, especially with everything that's happened. If you're listening to this current 2024, there's a lot of changes that happened and not in our favor. And really sitting down on this powerful day and acknowledging that and where and how you're going to dig up that strength of that divine femininity, really connecting with the divine on next steps. A beautiful thing you could also do is take a bath, or if you don't like the bath, it's any kind of water. You can do it in the shower. Um, I mean, you can dress up that bathtub, bubble bath, candles, crystals. Same thing in the shower. Maybe you buy I don't know, your favorite soap, or this is your everything shower, and just really pampering yourself. Meditation is always good. Feed that artistic expression that's ready to be unleashed, whether you're an artist and you draw, hell, even if you don't draw, just do it. Singing at the top of your lungs, dancing like no one's watching, really nurturing the creativity within you. Even if you are not, quote unquote, doing it right or you're not good at it, girl, fuck that. Like, no, you do it. We want that creative, artistic expression to start being birthed. And hey, start sharing and connecting with others, other matriarchs, other like minded individuals. Start putting up your boundaries. And if you are one that loves to bring in the new year, like Happy New Year, and this is what you want to be in the new year, now is the time to start writing all that out. Boundaries you're going to set and stick to, and why. No more energy vampirism. We're cutting that. No more being around people that no longer that don't support you in the ways that you should be supported. Nuh-uh. We're cutting that. I know people say, we're coming into our villain era. Is it really the villain era, or you're just no longer the doormat? Just is what it is. So, Friday the 13th, once misunderstood, now let's celebrate it. And if people are still like, oh no, it's not, you can send them a link to this episode, because I feel like we all need the sacred feminine right now, especially now. I feel like this deep connection to the lunar cycles and to life and to creation of whatever it is that we can birth. Remember, creation isn't just about literal bringing a baby into the world. No, that's not the creation. The creation is within us. Creation of community. That's what I am creating. Where you can literally drop me an email, being complete total strangers, and we connect and we support each other. Where we find that balance and that harmony. And with all of us, we should be able to balance our yin and yang, our masculine and feminine energies. So I really want this day to be celebrated, not to be feared. There's so much beauty, not only in Friday and not only in the number 13. And then when you bring them together, hell yeah, I get pumped for it. All right, gorgeous soul. That's it for Friday the 13th. I have a newsletter. So my newsletter coven is totally free. Um, I'm switching things up a bit. So I would love to hear, if you're part of my newsletter coven, I would love to hear your insight. I know this is barely the second updated newsletter you've received, but if you're liking the content a little bit better, I would love to hear from you. And I would love to hear from you regardless. Drop me a line. You can find me on all the socials, Instagrams, Threads, um, TikTok, just, freaking depending on what's going to happen January 19th. But if anything else fails, you can always send me an email at Susie's Enchanted Crossroads gmail.com. And I'm also on YouTube. I'm not as active. I'm trying to be a lot better, but email, you can always find me. 100% hands down, I will get that. All the links are in the show notes. If you have a topic or a question, hit that link. I would love to hear from you so we can start diving into other things that interest you. All right, gorgeous soul. Until next time, I will see you at the crossroads.